Hello, welcome. Thanks for dedicating your lunch hour to talking about pigs. My name is Paisley. Oh, Elena, she has got a question. All right, I'm going to keep going. And Bastian, if there's a problem and you need me to stop, you let me know, okay? Okay, so table of contents, just to kind of give you a little crash course of what we're going to get into today. A little bit about me, a little bit about you, the Yukon swine industry, information about preparing to receive your weaners, how to identify sick pigs, some specific health topics we're going to talk about, and then some resources. And so I've just put a little caveat at the bottom of this slide. I'm trying to give you really practical advice that you can then take and use on your farm. And some of that does include some meat withdrawal information. And so obviously I haven't been to your sites. I don't know exactly what you're doing. And so, just my little caveat is practical information, but make sure you're working with a local vet to make sure you're observing all meat withdrawals and that sort of stuff. Okay. Okay, so Bastian also already did a great introduction, so you know everything about me already. Basically, I love pigs, and I've been doing a lot of pig work for quite a few years. And in the last couple of years, I opened up my own practice. We see all pigs, smallholder pigs, organic, humane, antibiotic-free, heritage breed, rescue, sanctuaries. The only type of pig we don't see is a guinea pig, okay? But pretty much everything else we have a look at. We also service all of Ontario, and we have contracts to provide services to folks on native reservations and that are up north that have not a lot of access to veterinary care. So our whole practice is about helping people even from a distance, and we don't turn away anyone with respect to swine stuff. Okay, so in preparation for this presentation, I thought you might be interested in seeing, a couple pictures of some of our clients. This is one I wanted to show. This is Linton Pasture Pork. They have a farrow to finish pasture pork operation, extremely high welfare, heritage breeds, and excellent carcass specs. And I know carcass is always something that is really important for pasture pig management and can be really hard to get where you want it to be. So here's just a picture of their weaner pigs out on pasture. Maybe you can see a little bit, if I add the pointer here, that you can see this is where they just moved the electric fence. Okay, so the pigs are now coming over here to graze. And this is one of the sows with her recent litter. So in preparation of this, I stalked y'all a little bit. Okay, I did all the Googling that I could about the Yukon swine industry. I'm not sure if this gent is in the audience today or this person as well. And so I tried to read up on a lot of really cool initiatives that are going on in the Yukon, reclaiming of some, mining land, like local production to local grocery stores, humane raise, antibiotic free. There's also some good government funding going on. So in preparation for this, I tried to learn as much as I could about your industry without being there. Bastien did give me a little bit of a crash course. So, y'all can correct me at the end of the presentation and tell me what I got wrong, okay? But my understanding is that most farmers are seasonal operators that are bringing weaner pigs in the first week of May. So like any time now. These imported piglets are coming from a couple of different farms, and, people are growing pigs throughout the summer and then slaughtering them in the fall. As well, Bastien told me that most of the pigs are slaughtered at abattoirs, and a lot of those pigs are being sold directly to final customers or to local butcher shops, which is a little bit different from how we do it in Ontario. The other thing are typical breeds of pigs. So my understanding is that it's generally landrace York, but there are some crosses, and that there are some people who are doing wild boar stuff as well. And then in terms of feed sources, my understanding is that the pigs in the Yukon are getting commercial feed, but that there also are local programs where you can feed grocery waste or kitchen scraps from restaurants and grocery stores as a way to supplement the diet too. And then in terms of veterinary care, my understanding is that you've got some local clinics that can help. And there's also government support, financial support for you to be able to access care through different avenues there. I also came across this report from StatsCan in 2021 that I thought highlighted some interesting things about the industry. So there's a decent amount of farms in the Yukon, but a pretty small percentage of them have pigs. Okay, so about less than 20% have pigs. And the land size per farm in the Yukon is about a quarter of the average land size per farm across Canada, which makes sense, right? And then these three pieces of information were very interesting too. So 70% of sales are direct farm sales in the Yukon versus less than 15% in the rest of Canada do that. As well, 45% of farm operators in the Yukon are female. Versus the rest of Canada, it's less than 11% to 30% at best. And in the Yukon, the report stated that 60 to 70% of farm operators have a job off the farm, versus in Canada, that average is a lot lower. So in conclusion, I think you guys already know this, but it's important to just pause and recognize that y'all have a unique and specific industry. It's unique from the rest of Canada. And, some of these conventional mainstream, Canadian pork producer initiatives, they may or may not really apply to what you've got going on. You've got limited access to swine specialists, nutritionists, swine specialists, ventilation experts, veterinarians, but you do have some government funding to support it. You've got small population of pigs, they're seasonal, and you've got part-time farmers, and you've got outdoor pigs with lots of multi-purpose land use, mixed farms, that sort of thing. So like I said at the end of the presentation, you can tell me what I got wrong or right on that. But I wanted to do some research and to really tailor this presentation to try to make things that are going to be relevant for you. All right, so let's get into the meat of it here. So initially I was approached to ask to do a presentation focusing on, receiving your spring weaner pigs and how to set them up for success on your farm. So let's really hone in on that. So first things first, what to expect when you're expecting. If you're buying a used car, you're probably going to get a mechanic to check it out and see what's under the hood. It's the same thing with pigs. Before you're getting your weaner pigs, you need to get a little bit of information about what's going on under the hood of these pigs. So there's really important questions that you need to ask. So you need to know how old those pigs are when you receive them. You need to know what breed they are. That's going to really impact what your expectations are for growth rate, feed conversion, and carcass traits, okay, at slaughter. You need to know what vaccinations have been given. If there have been vaccines, what did they get? How much? Dewormer, what did they get? How much? Any health concerns? And then the last is really important is you want to have some understanding of the disease status of the sow farm for these 4 specific diseases. So there's PED, which is porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, influenza A, which is the flu, Mycoplasma pneumoniae, which causes nasty pneumonia in kind of older pigs when they are about market weight, and porcine reproductive and respiratory virus, or PRRS virus, which causes a lot of respiratory and growing issues in nursery pigs. So one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself is to know what the disease status are of your pigs that you're receiving. Because depending upon if they're positive for some of these viruses, that's going to completely change the type of care that they need. It's going to change your expectations on growth rate, mortality rate, and it might cause you to implement a medication protocol that you wouldn't otherwise. So that's kind of the number one thing. And even even if you don't get this information until after you've received the pigs, that's okay. You just need that information, as soon as possible when you're starting the group out. Okay. The next thing is environment, housing, and hospital pen preparation. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you lots of resources on this. And to be honest, this type of information is kind of the most freely available. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. But I just want to point out that, especially if you're getting pigs that are being shipped in from somewhere, your pigs are going to be exhausted and they're going to be so stressed on arrival. Especially for weaner pigs, gosh, sometimes these pigs are on a truck for a really, really long time. There are transport regulations, okay, for wean pigs in terms of, stocking density, bedding requirements, and the interval at which they can go without rest, feed, or water. However, a lot of people are surprised to learn that interval is actually pretty long. So for pigs, the maximum allowed interval that they can go without rest, water, or feed during the process of preparing to ship, shipping, and receiving those pigs is 28 hours. So, calling back to my previous comments, knowing where your pigs are coming from, knowing how long they're going to be on the truck, and just assuming that these poor gaffers are going to be so exhausted and so tired on arrival. So you want to have everything ready when they arrive. You don't want to be like scrambling. I don't know if we got the water hooked up. I don't know if we got feed. You want to be ready to go when these poor guys get there. Okay. So I have put in a few pictures of some different setups from Linton Pasture Pork. So they have a pen corral system that they can use to receive pigs and ship pigs. And it's just an example of kind of having things set up when you get there so that you can look at each pig, make sure they're healthy, that sort of stuff. Here's another picture of the corral that they're using here. And you can see that it's already set up and ready to go for when they are receiving pigs. The next thing that you want to think about in terms of environment is a hospital pen. You don't want to be putting together a hospital pen when you need it. You want to have it already kind of set up. So in this picture here, we've got some Mangalista pigs. I don't know if you know those. They're the curly-haired pigs. And we've got some shelters set up here. And then these shelters can be a designated hospital pen. And the hospital pen is going to be used to isolate compromised animals. It's going to have really easy access to feed and water in the pen. So, like a bowl that they can access and a nipple, making sure it's not too high that the little baby or the weaner pigs can actually reach it. It's going to have the ability to have extra heat or bedding. You can insulate the top of those. You might consider running power out there for a power cord, for heater. And some of my clients in their hospital pen actually install like a little Wi-Fi camera that they can look on their phone and monitor any pig that's not feeling well during the course. And then, of course, in your hospital pen, you want to have it something that you can move, something that you can easily clean and disinfect. So there's a lot of different options. So this is kind of a mobile one that you can have out in the pasture. In that previous picture, though, in this big barn here, there's some penning in there where they have a hospital pen where they can isolate sick animals. So you should, I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer, but you should be prepared to encounter sick pigs and have things set up. And usually if you do that, everything goes amazing. Okay. So we've kind of talked about being ready to receive your pigs, making sure you have history on these pigs, their disease status, and making sure the environment is ready. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is having a first aid kit and making sure that that is ready to go. So I know there's a lot of writing on this slide, but I wanted to get you the list of what I encourage or somewhat kind of, mandate that my producers have for a first aid kit. So for growing pigs, they need to have needles and syringes, a thermometer to do a rectal thermometer to see if the pig has a fever. You need some type of restraint. So are you going to snare the pig? Do you have paneling or a corral system? How are you going to isolate or restrain the pig in order to give it a treatment? You got to have pain medication. I recommend injectable meloxicam or oral meloxicam. You absolutely need to have some antibiotics ready to go on site. Weaner pigs can arrive with shipping fever, pneumonia, lameness, injuries that they've gotten on the truck that do require some antibiotics. Of the antibiotics that I've mentioned here, there's a few things to point out. And the main thing is about the meat withdrawal. So different medications have a different meat withdrawal, and you might want to carry something that has maybe less expensive, but works good, penicillin, but it's got a longer meat withdrawal. So you're not going to use that on your finishing pigs versus something like even like a Draxxin or an XNL or a Thailand that's going to have like a shorter withdrawal time. You're also going to want to consider to have some water-soluble products, vitamins and electrolytes in the water. Those are really nice to start when you receive your pigs. It can help reduce some of that stress and help get some sugar and vitamins into them once they get off the truck. And you might consider carrying some oral antibiotics. The most common ones we're using would be oral amoxicillin, Thailand water-soluble, maybe avlosin water-soluble. Vaccinations, I highly recommend that everyone is vaccinating or receiving pigs that did receive a vaccine for circovirus and mycoplasma pneumonia. These are two things that you can vaccinate. The vaccine works great, and it's going to save you a lot of headache dealing with these diseases if you can vaccinate. And they absolutely do sell smaller dose bottles for these. You're also going to want to have something for wound care. If you guys have outdoor pigs, you know that injuries happen. They root up something, they destroy something, they bust through the fence. You got to have some either chlorhexidine or iodine to clean up some wounds. And I really like to have some wound spray on hand where you can just spray it and it really helps heal the skin. Don't underestimate the importance of some of these little wounds because they can impact carcass quality if there's active wounds and inflammation and scarring on that carcass. So don't underestimate, if pigs are getting in fights or have scratches and stuff like those need to be cared for and healed up, and it will, bring more value to that carcass as well. You also might consider having some supplies on hand, a Ziploc bag for a feed sample, plastic sealed jars if you need to take a poop sample, and then maybe an oral fluid rope kit, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I just put in a picture here. So this is an example of an outdoor pig first aid kit. It's got disinfectant, gloves, needles, syringes, antibiotic, wound care, thermometer. So it doesn't take up a lot of space. And our first aid kits are usually between $100 and $300, depending upon how much supplies people need. And usually we're selling needles and syringes and thermometers cheaper than the feed mill. So it ends up usually being something that most farms can accommodate in terms of cost. Okay, I also just put this up quickly about needle sizes. That's something I get a lot of questions about, just to kind of give you a ballpark. So those weaners that you're receiving are probably in that 10 kilogram area if they're 6 to 8 weeks old. And this gives you information on what needle size you need to be using for each one of those. Print it out, put it in the barn and make sure you're stocking needles of those various sizes so that you have what you need when you need it. And then the next thing, so in addition to the first aid kit, I recommend that all farms and all my clients, they have a swine treatment plan. And this is just an example of it. And it's like a 4 or 5 page document. What it does is it lists the drug, it lists what type of drug it is, what that drug does. It gives information about how to give it, information about why you're giving it, dosage, and withdrawal. So what this does is we have this treatment plan that has 30 or 40 drugs on it, pain medication, antibiotics, gastrointestinal support medications, vitamins, minerals, parasite medications. And our producers have this, and then you can have that treatment protocol on farm. So if you run into something, you can refer back to that, and it helps you be able to use, what you have at your disposal. And it also provides information for drugs that you may have or may not have. Thinking about if you're in an emergency situation, maybe there's only one vet locally, they don't have penicillin, but they do have, fluorophenocal. You still have access on how to use both of those drugs. So it's a way to kind of empower producers to be able to use things, and it gives them the information that they need on how to use different drugs. Okay, so to kind of quickly summarize that, part of the presentation was all about the first aid kit, what is in a first aid kit, as well as having a swine treatment formulary or like a treatment protocol on farm. Really, really important. I suggest that you seek one out from your local vet. If that's not an option, you're welcome to contact me. We can have a little chat, and we can get you set up with some sort of a general treatment protocol that you then can take and use with your local veterinarian if you would like. Okay. So the next part of the presentation is all about identifying healthy and sick pigs and looking at things on a group basis as well as an individual pig basis. So when I go to a lot of my farm calls to see a sick pig, this is kind of like me looking over the fence, okay, of what's going on. And, the point of this picture is kind of to illustrate, like, you can't really tell much about what's going on with the pigs, from the other side of the fence. Okay. You got to get in the pens, you got to get in the pasture, you got to get near those pigs to see what's going on. And I would say that is like the number one toughest thing about pasture pigs or pigs that are outside in pens, is that it can be really hard to see what's going on with them. They're not confined to a small area, and it can be difficult to keep a close eye on them. So something to keep in mind. So I just put on here a bit of a reference for you about normal and abnormal behavior. So especially if you're getting pigs for the first time, or you have only had pigs a few times, you may or may not be familiar with what's sort of normal or abnormal for pig behavior. So there's three main categories here for it. So we've got this activity here, lying down. So if you are kind of not in a pen, but you're looking into the pen, what you should see is that most pigs will sleep together. Okay, they like to be touching one another. Yeah, they're usually like asleep with their legs, stretched out. Usually they're pretty active during the day, and they're generally sleeping through most of the night, and then they're, on and off napping throughout the day. So an abnormal behavior for lying down is usually related to temperature. So if pigs are too cold, they're going to be sleeping on a pile. Okay, so they're not going to be just overlapped. They're going to be fully overlapped, sleeping on top of each other. If they're too hot, you're going to see open mouth breathing, panting. And this is really important for receiving wean pigs. Chilling of wean pigs is one of the biggest issues. Wean pigs are used to being with their mom. They might be used to being in big groups. They're getting lots of external heat. They go on this truck, they get stressed, and now they're arriving to your place. And maybe there's only 5 of them. Maybe your group size is only 5. And now they're really having to thermoregulate after being stressed and after not really getting much for feed and water for a long time. So seeing their lying behavior is really important. The next thing is about getting up. So pigs are prey animals. They're on alert. You are the predator. They are looking for you. They are aware of your presence. And so unless you have super, 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 super tame pigs, usually when you go up to those pigs should be getting up. They should be getting up freely and easily. And they should be curious. They should be alert, looking at you. If you notice that there are some pigs that are not getting up, or one of the telltale signs are pigs that have large, wet red marks on their back or on their side, that indicates a pig that has been lying down and not really getting up with the rest of the group. Especially with nursery pigs, they're used to doing things as a group. The mom, the sow, she's calling them over to suckle as a group. Nursery pigs, they like to do things at a group. They're like me when I was a teenage girl. You know, we went to the bathroom together, we went to class together, you know, we went to soccer practice together. It's the same with weaned pigs. They like to do things together. Vocalizing is another one. I mean, the vocalizing is a little bit more obvious. You know, pigs make those really cute sounds. If they're screaming or coughing, that's not a good sign. The next one here is defecating and urinating. So pigs in their pen, they're very clean and they want to have a spot for everything. So they want to have a pee and poop spot, they want to have a sleep spot, they want to have a play spot, and they want to have a eating and drinking spot. If you have got the eating and drinking spot, which is also their sleeping spot, that can cause a lot of trouble. And one of the things that you can see is these nursery pigs just peeing and pooping everywhere, or not peeing and pooping kind of in a designated location. So you really want to be looking for whether or not pigs are peeing and pooping all over. You want to look for diarrhea, and of course, bloody diarrhea is not normal. The next thing is exercise. And so young pigs, they love to play. Okay. They love to zoom around. They love to like chase each other and like kick around and that sort of thing. If you have pigs that are wanting to get up, they're lying by themselves, they're not joining in with the other pigs, those are subtle signs that that pig is not feeling very well. And so, yeah, those are really important. And these behaviors, understanding kind of what's normal or abnormal, these are the things that are going to help you detect disease early. Anyone can detect a pig that's like with diarrhea. Okay, anyone can see that. You want to be honing in on the little subtle abnormal behaviors that are indicating early stages of disease. So a messy toilet area, a pig that's kind of being a bit antisocial, you know, a pig that's got a really big red wet mark on it. So these are the things that you want to pick up on that's going to allow you to pick up on disease a little easier. And then the next thing is the individual pig inspection. So, you know, nose to tail. You guys can read through this, but you want to be looking at everything. How does their hair look? How are their ears? Is their eye discharge? How is their breathing? Do they have a hernia? Do they have lameness? Do they have diarrhea, scalding? So for each pig, you want to be doing a visual assessment of all of these, you know, 10 or 15 things to see what is going on with your pig. And this will be another thing that really helps you catch disease earlier and faster, especially with nursery pigs. Oftentimes when they get to that 10 to 11 week age, that's when you start seeing hernias, you start seeing crypt orchids, that sort of stuff. Oh, I think they've taken off the screen sharing here. Oh, all right, let's go back. All righty. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is really talking about specific outdoor health topics for your outdoor pig operations. So this is based on what I see every day for dry lot, smallholder stuff. First things first is worms, okay? Worms are a huge deal and you should care about them and try to sort them out on your farm. There's some specifics about why worms are a big deal. For one thing, if you have any of these risk factors, you have other pigs, you have land that pigs were on previously, or you have small surface area, then you are at a high risk for worms. Worm eggs pretty much never die. They live for about 15 years. Roundworms infect humans. Gross. And then the second one, you want to raise pigs. You don't want to be raising roundworms. You don't want all this money you're spending on feed to be feeding roundworms. You want to be making bacon and pork chops out of that, okay? So it's really important. And then the other thing is that the roundworm life cycle involves migrating through the lungs and the liver. That can specifically result in carcass condemnations and liver pulls, which you don't want. So I just included here the life cycle of the roundworm for you guys. So it starts right here. Here's the pig. So roundworm eggs are consumed orally by the pig, okay? The egg is consumed, it goes into the intestine, the egg hatches and releases a little baby worm. That baby worm penetrates the intestine, migrates through the liver, and then it goes all the way up to the lungs. The pigs then cough the worms up from their lungs and swallow them, and the worms get back into the intestines and then start to grow as the adult mature worm. So it's a pretty gross life cycle. It screws up the liver, it screws up the lungs, and it can really cause a lot of problems. It can kind of chronically cause slow growth rates, but it also can cause a really nasty, severe fatal pneumonia. So you want to be really careful with roundworms. So I've put some information here on treatment. I'll go through it quickly. You can look back on the recording. My recommendation is injectable ivermectin pre-farrow to all sows and gilts 7 to 10 days before farrowing. Okay. And then I also think you should injectable bimectin all of the nursery pigs that you receive. The bimectin is really inexpensive. Most of the bottles last for 3 or 4 years, and it works really well. There are other dewormers, Safeguard, Piperazine, Parental. They're okay. They're decent for late stage finishing, but they have a smaller spectrum of activity. And the dose that the pig is getting is not well controlled because these oral dewormers are in the water or in their feed. And the amount that that pig receives is completely based on how much feed it got. So you could be overdosing it, you could be underdosing it. And then if you're really concerned about worms, work with your vet to do a fecal sample. I can share with you some pooled fecal sample protocols. And then also talk to your person at the abattoir. Are you seeing evidence of issues in the lungs or the liver? Okay. As well, are they seeing large spaghetti noodle roundworms in the liver? The next thing I see a lot on received nursery pigs is mange, okay, external parasites mange. This is what it tends to look like. They kind of get this scabby stuff around their legs, and then they get this kind of this reddish, rusty stuff on their abdomen. It's really, really common. The pigs are going to be itching. They're going to be scratching. They can have brown ear discharge. All sows shed the mange to their babies, and then over time, the mange, which is like these little mites, they get worse and worse and worse and cause issues. If you give the ivermectin before the sows farrow, it'll help cut it down. You want to get rid of mange. You don't want to be living with mange. It's zoonotic, so it affects humans. So, you're going to get it. It's really uncomfortable for the pig, and it absolutely affects the growth of the pigs because they're spending their time scratching and not eating. Again, ivermectin for the win, the bimectin that I showed you on the previous slide. 2 doses, 10 days apart, treat all the pigs, and you'll never look back. I wanted to show you this picture as well. So this is a heritage breed wiener pig that was just received. So if you look at the ears here, that is mange. You might think it's just like some mud at first, but it doesn't come off, and that's going to slowly spread throughout the body. It's nasty. You don't want to have those types of skin changes. So you really want to be treating for mange. The next thing is ticks, biting, lice, and flies. So everywhere I've worked, there have been a lot of issues with these critters. You want to get something in place for fly control. The feed store sells fly spray. Canadian Tire does a Thermacell, which is like, it's this like little pesticide pad, and it kind of puts it into the air to keep it away. Air movement, having some sort of a fan or some sort of like a hose that's moving the air around the pigs. You want to get rid of standing water, or you put the pigs in a lot of straw to bury in to try to get away from the flies and the lice. For flies, the number one thing you can do is clean up your water troughs, feeders, and feed spills every day. Flies are laying their eggs in this, and if you get rid of that, you're going to cut down on 80% of the flies. All right. The biting flies and lice are a problem because the bites are nasty and they impact the carcass. As well, pigs can have an allergic reaction to the bite. So really, you need 10 to 14 days to heal pre-slaughter to help reduce the carcass trimming. And if it's bad, you're going to treat with meloxicam, which is in your first aid kit, some sort of a topical steroid cream, or a wound care spray, which is also in your first aid kit. And you're going to treat with some fly spray too. Depending upon how bad this is, I've seen this really devastate a person's seasonal pig harvest because it's so bad. Mosquitoes are another huge problem in outdoor pigs, and they also need to be treated really aggressively. So here are my recommendations if you're dealing with a lot of mosquitoes. No standing water and nothing that could hold water. All right. If it's anything like my farm that I grew up on, there was the odd tire or piece of scrap metal hanging around that, got water in it and was for sure a mosquito breeding ground. So clean all that stuff up. Fill any potholes in the pen. Trim tree branches and any grass or vegetation around the pen. Adult mosquitoes like to live under leaves and under the blades of grass, and they congregate there and they kind of set up shop while they're waiting to feed. So if you cut tree branches that are hanging over the pens, and if you have a 3-foot gravel barrier around where the pigs are hanging out, especially if it's dry lot, that's going to really help with mosquitoes. And it's also going to help with rodent control too. The third option, if things are really bad, you got to hire a licensed pet control person who can apply an integrated management strategy for adult mosquitoes as well as larval, water-based mosquitoes where the larvae are growing in the water before they're adult. Don't forget to treat yourself for mosquitoes as well. Mosquitoes will learn your routine. They will know when you are around. You need to apply some mosquito spray as well to reduce the chance of you inadvertently attracting the mosquitoes to the pigs. All right. The next thing here is erysipelas. I've had a ton of erysipelas outbreaks this year. So this is a bacteria. It is carried in the tonsils of pigs. It's shed from the mom to the babies. And this bacteria is also present in dirt, wood, and pasture. There's 2 forms of this disease. There's an acute disease, which causes these diamond skin lesions. And there's a chronic form that's actually really hard to cure, and it causes lameness and heart issues. I highly recommend that you vaccinate your nursery pigs for this. There's a vaccine, FarrowSure Gold, 2 doses a few weeks apart, can cause a little bit of lethargy. But if you have new fill, a new pasture, new gravel, new wood chips, you're at high risk for erysipelas, and it will kill pigs. So I highly recommend that you vaccinate for this, okay? It's definitely one of those ones that's in the environment. The next one is leptospirosis, or we call it lepto. So this is zoonotic, meaning that it can pass from pigs to humans. Here's a picture of some pigs drinking water out on pasture or in a dirt lot. Leptospirosis is a bacteria with many strains. It hangs out in the kidney of a lot of animals, domesticated farm animals, and especially wildlife. What happens is our wildlife friends, or skunks or raccoons or possums, they pee, and then they either pee directly into a pig water source, or there's runoff from that urine into the pig's pens. The pigs then interact with that urine, or they root it up, and they spread that lepto from the possum urine. The pig comes into contact with it, and that leptospirosis bacteria then goes into the pig. Once pigs are exposed to lepto, they could die, they could get really sick, they could also become carriers. So now the pigs are peeing lepto everywhere. So, you don't want it because it's a human health risk. It's a risk to the pigs, and you don't want these pigs to just be peeing leptospirosis bacteria all over your property. It's also a really good reason for why you need good wildlife control. And you can also vaccinate with the FarrowSure Gold B, which is the previous vaccine that I recommended on the same slide. Okay, so lepto, a big deal, and it likes to kill heavyweight finisher pigs. The next thing I wanted to mention here is traumatic injuries to pigs. This is kind of a downer, but dog attacks, people's pets, wolves, coyotes, wild dogs, they absolutely will come and grab your pigs. You need an electric fence. This can be extremely serious and dangerous. Your pigs can be attacked. You can be attacked while you're trying to get the dog off. This can be a bad deal, and you need to make sure you have some sort of plan to keep dogs away from your pigs. And there's also, of course, a rabies concern. So with dog attacks, you need to give them pain medication. You need to clean their wounds. You have to give injectable antibiotics, all the things that are in your first aid kit. You may need a veterinarian to come out to sew up the pig. You'll probably need to put that pig in a hospital pen and give it extra heat. And then if worst case scenario, having a plan for humane euthanasia is often kinder than letting these pigs just succumb to their injuries. They can often have chest wounds and chest punctures that are pretty nasty. So kind of a downer topic, but it is something that can be a huge problem for outdoor or pasture pigs with dogs or coyotes. The next thing I wanted to touch on just very quickly is something called African swine fever. It's a really hot topic right now. It's a very infectious and contagious virus. It's not a public health issue. The meat is safe. It only affects pigs. It's very deadly for pigs, this virus. It causes these purple ears, abortions, and it will kill nursery pigs. It's not in Canada, but it is present in Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And Canada is absolutely scared, terrified that we're going to accidentally get African swine fever here. If we get African swine fever in Canada, it will shut down the pork industry, and millions of pigs will be destroyed or they will die because of the virus. So by any means, like, we don't want this in our herd. The number one thing you can do to prevent African swine fever is to not feed any pork products or produce that has been in contact with pork to your pigs. All right. No deli meat, no sandwich, no like special Italian sausage that your cousin brought over, like nothing that has been in contact with meat can get into your pigs. It can be hard to know if something has come into contact with meat. So you might consider feeding commercial pig feed only and not feeding kitchen scraps or scraps from the grocery stores because there is a risk there, and the risk is low. I admit the risk is absolutely low, but the consequences of it are super, super high. So you might consider just sticking with commercial pig feed. So the last part of the presentation here really quickly is I want to point out some on-farm resources. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click through them to quickly introduce them. And if you want more information about them, you can go back onto the video and have a look. The first one is Canada Pork Excellence. That is a program that if you are selling your meat to provincial, territorial, or federal abattoirs, you have to be certified. There's a couple modules in here that are really helpful on record keeping and plans for euthanasia and dead stock. The manual is very long, I'm not going to lie, but it does have some really good information, and it's good to have to be thinking ahead before a crisis for some of this emergency management stuff. The next one is the Canadian Code of Practice for Pigs. This tells you what you're allowed and not allowed to do for raising pigs. This code is used for the prosecution of animal welfare and abuse cases, and it sets the standard of care. So it's important to, as pig farmers, that you know what are the expectations. There's a lot of good information and a lot of really good information on transport and slaughter guidelines. I have a couple pieces of examples from these, but we'll skip through them. This is a Canadian euthanasia, on-farm euthanasia guideline. This is really good. It talks about options for euthanasia, instructions, and creating an action plan. So if you're dealing with sick pigs and you think a pig might need to be euthanized, this is the type of thing that you're going to want to be looking at and referring to and creating a plan before you need it. There's also quite a lot of producer handbooks from the different provinces. I've gone through, I've read all of these handbooks, and I just want to highlight to you a couple things about each one of the handbooks. So for Yukon, the handbook is excellent. It's recent. It is really, really good information on anatomy, physiology, and diseases. Okay, so if you need information on diseases, do the Yukon Swine Producer Handbook. This is the Ontario one. This Ontario one, it's written like pretty densely. There's a lot of writing, but they have really good appendixes on applied skills, how to load, how to tattoo, how to ear tag, restraint. So if you need some help or some support, look at this manual for some practical skills related to loading and slaughter, okay? The next one is the Saskatchewan one. This one has really good information on disinfectants, types of disinfectants, what to use, how to use them, good information on pain control, and really good information on toxoplasmosis and trichinella, which are food safety issues for outdoor pigs. Not very common, but when you need information, you need good information on it. So check out the Saskatchewan one for that. The next one is the British Columbia one. If you're going to read any of them, read the British Columbia one. It's excellent. It's new. It's beautiful, and it's long. Extremely good information here. Everything from management to production to some health stuff. This is a really good one to have in your pocket if you don't already know about it. The next one is the Canadian Small Scale Pig Farming Manual. This one has some really good information. It talks about toxic plants. So if you're feeding any hay, you're doing any grazing, it's going to like forest grazing. We have some people that are, fencing off wood lots and letting the pigs graze. It talks to you about toxic plants. It's got YouTube links on producer skills and very useful. The Alberta pork one, the main thing on here is biosecurity information. So if you're worried about diseases coming into your farm, check that one out. There's also the US-based Pork Information Gateway. What they do on this is they have national experts on pork production write articles, high quality articles on a variety of topics. They have a really good section on pork quality if you're looking about how to increase your carcass quality. And they do have some stuff specifically on small farming, but they have a ton of really good categories, and they're like recently updated articles that are very useful, applicable, and they're honestly written by the best of the best, like the experts in the field. So that's a good one. The last one I want to mention is Vendor Plan Consulting. $15 a month. These are practical how-to on-farm videos of how to do pig stuff. Castration, tail docking, physical exam, ear notching, navel dipping, oral medication, eye issues. It's based out of the States, but if you're looking for I just need a video on how to give an injection to a pig, this is where you're going to want to go. Very, very useful, very good information. You only have to subscribe for 1 month if you want. You can watch the videos that you need, and it's a very, very good tool. Okay, so try to get through that quickly so that there's time for questions. But just to summarize, basically what I wanted to go over today was preparing your site for new pigs, identifying healthy and sick pigs, common nursery pig issues, and then resources on where to get more information. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. This is one of my clients who has Mangalitsa pigs. These pigs were just castrated by me at the weight of 150 pounds. And then they also have water buffalo that make water buffalo mozzarella in the back. So just a little picture of some of the clients that I'm working with.